Today on Let's Paint, we are finally getting around to our first named citizen of the Dan Abnett block, and I'm going for the old Crock and the hover chair. So to kick things off, we are going to do Crock's white. This is just to give it the extra highlight before I put the contrast paints on. Now, the all-important part, as we all know, I'm doing the Dan Abnett block. So the first character has to be named after a Dan Abnett character. Only makes sense. So who is the most famous Dan Abnett character in a wheelchair / hover chair, I guess? It is, of course, Ravenor, the Inquisitor. So first appeared in the Eisenhorn trilogy, when it was just the trilogy. He was his interrogator, which is like a trainee inquisitor. He was then hideously scarred and injured in an attack on a Fraxian Prime, I think it's pronounced, and it ended up putting him in this weird bubble hover chair thing that you don't see him anymore, which doesn't really make sense for this figure. But beyond that, it's an old guy in a chair. His key features in the books was that he was an investigator, he was an inquisitor. Hang on, let's talk about the paint. Runic grey, obviously for the chair to give it sort of a metal look, and then I'm gonna start layering up the engine parts with the plasmatic bolt. So yeah, he was an investigator. He also had psychic abilities. So I'm thinking for the RPG Judge Dredd Games Workshop, we obviously are going to give him just enough to be psychic and maybe have a little Psybolt power that he can blast at people, and we're going to make him a peeper. In 2000 AD, a peeper is a citizen that spies on his neighbours and other blocks through the windows. You get professional peepers that actually work for the Justice Department. So I'm going to imagine him being that kind of investigator. He's actually spying on his neighbours like a little jerk. And I kind of like the idea of him just being, neighbourhood watch, old guy. Can't really get up too much. He's trapped in his wheelchair. But for some reason, odd things always happen around him. Furniture moves. Plant pots even smash, cups smash, things fall off tables. Now and again when a Juve is causing him aggro in the hallways, the Juve just randomly falls over. He's going to just be a low-level psyker with telekinesis or a Psyblast ability. That would be his only real ability. The rest of his stats I'm going to keep pretty weak. The guy is in a chair. He's old. I don't want him to be a powerhouse like Ravenor is. That will be his background for the game. Let me know what you think. Let me know who I should try and work on next. I've got a list of characters Dan Abnett has created over the years that I'm trying to work out what they can be in a Judge Dredd setting. Obviously lots of judge names, lots of city dev options, even lots of medics. A bit stuck on citizens, but we'll get there. We'll work them all out in the end. But I just like the idea that he's inquisitive rather than an Inquisitor for 2000 AD. So he's going to be a little peeper. Right, as you can see, I'm just slapping on the Runic Grey, just letting the paint do what it's gotta do. This model is really surprisingly detailed. I didn't appreciate it until I started painting how much stuff there is on him. The chair looks really good. I was feeling a little guilty just slapping a grey wash basically over it, but it ends up going really well, so you'll see at the end. I'm pretty happy with the results I get. Now, we've probably seen enough of me slapping grey on, so let's skip forward a little. Right, with that, the grey chair should now all be done. You can already see it's dipping into the recesses quite nicely, which allows us to quite nicely move onto the plasmatic bolt. There's not many sections I'm going to use this on, so I'm thinking I might use it on the button on the front, but I'm definitely using it down here. Not letting the grey dry because I'm hoping they're going to flood into each other and kind of do a fake wet blending. This colour is so light, I'm thinking I should have put white down. I will go back and put some white down and do this stage again. I'm just thinking this is so thin as a colour. But with that all drying, we're going to move on to the Holy White and the Pallid Bone, which we're going to use on his face. So the Holy White obviously is going to be his grey hair. And the Pallid Bone is going to give him, I don't want to say it, but like a dying, aged face. It's not a healthy colour. So starting off with the white. Remember, this Holy White is actually grey. So I'm going to splodge it on. It's going to look really dark. It's going to scare the life out of me because it looks way too dark. But I'm going to trust the process as much as I can. I don't trust anything. I'm very untrustworthy. But let's just get the paint on. Let it sit. Hope for the best. There we go. You can see it is running off the high peaks, which will give him his white hair. But he'll probably need a dry brush of white on that. And then we are into the pallid bone. I'm trying to experiment with more diversity in the skin colours. I only have like Crusader flesh for the most part and Guilliman flesh. So I'm trying out the different colours in this way to see if I can just add some distinction between models. Super quick, super easy. Let the paint go where it's got to go. I made sure the white hadn't fully dried at this point because I'm hoping it's going to fight the paint that I'm putting on a little bit and kind of maybe rescue his eyebrows. Okay, he is looking terrifying at this wet stage, but I'm going to have to trust the process. There's always a point when you're painting, you're like, what am I doing? This looks wrong. I think I'm going to be alright in the end, but I'm definitely a little bit unsure. For those of you who don't know, I live in Ottawa, and we are currently experiencing a heat wave. The paint is not running as well as it would, even on a wet palette. I'm struggling. So you'll see me dipping the brush a few times. I'm having to thoroughly wash the brush, make sure the bristles are wet. So, Gravelord Grey. I'm going to use this on his belt, his boots, anything that would be black in a comic. I tried to avoid using metallic paints and pure black because it doesn't work great in my mind. When you look at it, the black always looks wrong, especially with speed paints. Ends up looking like a weird grey. So I would rather have a dark grey that looks more like a black than a black that looks like a grey. That sounded weird to say out loud. This is probably a good time to say, hey, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Make sure you're watching the whole video. You don't have to listen to it. Just make sure you're watching it. Give me the playtime. We've hit the 1,000 subscribers and now working on the 4,000 hours of view time, which is crazy high, but we're getting there. That will hopefully unlock a few more features for the channel. If you didn't know as well, we have a community section where I'm putting up all my RPG rules that I'm coming up with for use with the Games Workshop 1980s RPG setting. I've done a lot of the characters that I've painted on the channel and now up there with their own rules and stat sheets. We need to get back to building the block soon. I've got the next supplement to unpack that will help us build out some stuff, and I'll stop talking for a second to talk about Zealot Yellow instead. I'm going to do the inside of his legs, his arms and his chest in this. This colour I love using. Sometimes I find when I've done a zenith highlight like this model, the yellow doesn't always sit as nice as it would on a pure white base. So I'm just going to have to see how this works. I might have to come back and clean up the yellow with an overcoat of a layer paint, but I'll worry about that later. So yeah, all the rules are going to be there. We're heading back to the sector block very soon. Like if you've not seen the earlier video I did, I designed a block called Dan Abnett. We rolled it up using the old RPG rules to work out where all the stuff was. But I actually have I've forgotten what it's called now. Hang on. I have the old Rogue Trader / Judge Dredd City Block box set, which let you build maps and stuff. It was meant for Rogue Trader originally, but they also folded in Judge Dredd to it as well. Has a lot of goodies in there, and the booklet has stuff about designing a block and how each floor should look. So that's probably going to be an unboxing video coming very soon. That's also from the 1980s. It's crazy to think that some of these stuff that I'm referencing is coming up to 40 years old. Ugh. Right, we'll skip forward a little bit because I'm getting onto the fiddly yellow areas and I'm running out of stuff to chat about. Okay, we've left that to dry for a little bit because the next section is going to be his waistcoat and the outer legs, and I'm using the magic blue for this. This is a bright, bold blue if I can get it right. Or, in some areas of this model, it's a weird aqua green because it blends with the yellow. I didn't quite give it enough time to dry. These hot temperatures are really messing it up. It's like, I feel like it should be all drying super quick, but it's not. The high points of the model are drying, so as you can see the leg looks a little green. We will fix that up later. It's not the end of the world when it happens. You just have to leave it alone, let it dry, go back to it later. But we're just going to carefully go around everything, do his back, do his waistcoat, and you can join me in a moment. Actually, this is a good time to hit subscribe. Do it, in case you hadn't already. If you've reached it, if you've got this far into the video, I most likely deserve a like. Unless you're just auto-playing, in which case thank you for the view time. I do appreciate that as well. And now we're on to the final touches with the blue. Just making sure I got good coverage on the waistcoat. He's got a lot of nooks and crannies and hidey holes. The leg has dried up a bit more, so we'll go a bit more over with the blue. That's probably going to need some white on it and a refresh, but you get the idea. At this stage, he is pretty much tabletop ready. No one would complain about him being on the table. If they did complain, they're probably assholes, so ignore them. I like the fact that he almost fits in with my city dev with the yellow and blue combo. That's exactly how my blue bloods look. So I can imagine he's kind of affiliated with them, spying on people, telling the information to the city dev. Sneaky, sneaky old guy. Right, we're using Hive Dweller Purple just to pick out some little details, just to help add a little colour of pop. Did I just say that backwards? A little pop of colour was what I was meant to say. Damn, I think the heat's getting to me. Forget the paint. Right, we're doing the wristbands. This is a quick step, so we're not going to skip forward. That would be pretty pointless. There we go. And I don't know. Where else? I feel like I need something else that's purple. I don't really have anything. Okay, we're just doing the wristbands. Now we're back to the Corax white. This I like. It's not a bright white like the skull white. It's slightly warmer, slightly creamier. We're just gonna heavily place it onto the engine areas. The plasmatic color just didn't work as well as I was hoping. So we'll stick some white down and we'll go over it later. And then we'll dry brush the head to bring it up a bit more. Gone too grey. I want him to look a bit more shocking white. And nice and carefully. Don't want to mess this up. There we go. He's a bit more white. Went a bit too heavy there, but yeah, I'll live with it. Let's see if I can get some eyebrows on him. Right. Tell you what, we're not far off. I think there's a couple of details I want to try and pick out, maybe with the Warlord Grey. Nab that button on its control chair. And whatever this crank does, not entirely sure. Right, final touches I think, and we're pretty much there. Use the Warlord Grey just to make the handle a different colour, and I'm also going to pick out some detailing on the sides. This is just going to add a bit of depth to the chair. It's not a huge amount that I want to pick out. I'm quite happy with how the runic grey went down. And with those final jabs, that is it for me. That's tabletop ready. I am going to go a little bit extra on this model. I enjoyed painting them, so I want to keep going a little bit longer, but nothing too crazy. A little highlight, maybe some base layers just to build it up. But as always, I appreciate you stopping by, I appreciate you watching. Give me a like, and I'll catch you next week. Cheers for watching.